Well, we're live tonight. I tried to schedule it. I bungled all that up. We're in North Sioux City, South Dakota tonight. So, starting off the new year, started off a little rocky, but not bad. It's starting to take off again. There's a bunch of new stuff that we have to learn, and I need to go find an IT guy and whip him. So, but not bad for a Tuesday. I've already been out a little over a week now, and it's been pretty good. Let's see, what am I doing here? Yeah. Forgot to turn on the do not disturb. So yeah, like I said, we're up here in North Sioux City. Had to get the truck worked on today. Had an air leak, and it was just one of those weird lines that it just, the truck isn't that old, but then you got to realize you're putting as many miles on a month as most people put on their car a year. That's why you're changing your wipers out every 2-3 months and getting your oil changes, every couple of months. Had an interesting week last week. I made that video about it. Had to run up to the north side of Minneapolis. That was a weird load. But I tell you, the freight's about to pick up. I can just feel it. It's you could see it coming. I was down there talking to the guys down there at Franklin Furniture the other day, where I picked up a load, and suddenly the orders are in. Now that the New Year's over and the holidays are over, just we can't get enough trailers down there. So I'm very grateful for that. Was going to make a video about this, but there really wasn't much to record. I pulled out of Lexington, that meat plant, and truthfully, that's going to be closed here in another week or so. But there's really no big loss there. This is something with the cattle shortage that they've been talking about. Their warehouses are full. They have nowhere else to put it. And then what ended up happening was about 3 or 4 years ago, the price of feed got really high. So everybody just dumped everything, sold all their cattle off. Well, this is the result of that. So it's hopefully here in about another 6 months or so, beef prices will start dropping again. As more cows start flooding back into the market. But yeah, I went to Lexington and it was business as usual out there. So I don't know what they got planned for that place. There was a rumor that Sustainable Meat was in the process to buy it. They built a huge plant out there in North Plant. Rumor was that I think Walmart was interested in turning it into their own packing house. So, and that would make sense. Bentonville's right next to Rogers, and the Waltons and the Tysons are probably very good friends. They probably play golf together. So, I'm sure that if there was a deal like that, it's probably not as far-fetched as you would think. It's just, that's how these people do business. So we got about 760,000 on the truck now, and it's starting to nickel and dime me a bit. But you know, my last one I had, when it got 700,000, it nickel and dime me. The one after that, 700,000, nickel and dime me. And this one's starting to do it. I've had a pretty good run. I bought it with 454,000 2 years ago. I've got 760 on it now. So put some miles on it. Been maintaining it, doing the oil changes and all that. But you got little things that are starting to break now. So I've been doing a video on that. It's just, it's kind of weird. You got in this weird zone. I'm actually more scared to buy a truck at, 600,000 than I am at 800,000. Because at 800,000, everything that's broken is already broke, and they've already fixed the majority of all this stuff. These trucks all these parts have service lives on them. You're supposed to change them all out at certain intervals, and theoretically, the truck should never break down if you go through and change these parts out when the service interval says to do it. Most people don't do that. That's prohibitively expensive. Of course, what else is prohibitively expensive is fixing everything at once. So you kind of have to just take your chances with that. We are going to do the Hot Rod Power Tour this year, so I might make some videos on that. I don't know how deep I'm going to go. The last Power Tour I did a video every day. That wore me out. That was just absolutely that wore me out. It was hot, and, we're putting 300-400 miles on the car. I'm editing, I'm videoing. It was just me on that tour, and so it was a lot of work. That's why when I went on Tail of the Dragon this last year, I only put out 2 videos plus the 40 minutes of just driving the whole. I put the whole tail all the way from the split all the way down to Deals Gap. So that was kind of a fun drive. The Power Tour this year is going to be in Illinois and Missouri and Oklahoma. So it's going to start in Joliet, run out to Rantouli. It's basically Champaign Normal area. That's going to run over to St. Louis on the Illinois side, down to Springfield, and then to Tulsa. So you guys get some time off. I've done the last one I did, even though it was hot, it was a lot of fun. The cars, the people, the venues, but then just to drive, because the way they got the drive set up, there's a lot of things to see. So that's pretty good. This weather's been a little bipolar. If I sound like I'm sniffing, it was 75 degrees yesterday, and it was freezing this morning. So the weather is just kicking my butt. Needed to make up its mind. Yeah, I left up here, went to Goodlettsville, Tennessee, down to it's January, and it's only getting down to 50 at night down there. So I ended up going there down to Goodlettsville to Houston, Mississippi, and then back up here. So it was pretty yeah. Weather, it's a hoot. Other than that, I mean, we been trying to figure out some different things to do. You got another driver. All these spots you go cram in between us. And that's the way life works. Yeah, so I just lost my train of thought. But no, we had a pretty good it was a pretty good run. It was nice to be warm. But hopefully February doesn't destroy me. That's usually what happens. So So yeah, those are the future plans. Power tour is going to be in June. So tomorrow we, like I said, I had to get the truck fixed, and they had a couple of different loads they wanted me to do. I wasn't excited about either of them. Well, there was one I wouldn't have minded taking, but the my hours just suck. I'm running recaps right now, and for all of you who know how to run recaps, you can, if you plan it right, you can start really rolling over a few, but eventually it's going to catch up with you. And I got about a day and a half before it really just catches up with me, and I got to stop. So they wanted to give me a load to Goodlettsville and another Goodlettsville load, and that's not a bad load. It pays okay. One of these days, I thought about doing a video about pay, but it's kind of it's an iffy thing. I was thinking about doing a video about deregulation, and I was sitting there talking to another YouTuber, that guy that does Trucking Resources. He's Rob Finch. He's actually a pretty solid guy, and we can't. That's a hard video to do, especially I was in kindergarten when deregulation happened. So it's you're trying to take an objective look. This month it's been 46 years. So I only know one guy who's still actively trucking, and he's getting ready to retire, who was trucking before deregulation. And he was just running up and down the West Coast hauling batteries for Chief Auto Parts. So we were going through, and me and him, we were talking about the union and the influence it had and what happened after that, and the winners, the losers, and stuff like that. And I'll tell you right there is so much to unpack that he's like me. We've been really hesitant to do a video about it, just because there is so much to unpack. Many unintended consequences. Just so many things like that we can't, so we're just trying to figure out the proper way to do it, being objective. And I think that's the hardest part I'm having. Like I said, I never drove before that, and I never had a chauffeur's license. I came in and a little over 25 years ago, and it's about 25 years ago. And so, I mean, we were still on paper with no e-logs and all that, but you could see the writing on the wall. So I had about 3-4 years of just being a clean outlaw, and then they went and changed the hours of service in 2004, and you could see the writing on the wall. I wish they hadn't changed the hours of service. I wish they'd left it 10, 8, and 15, for the mere fact that all they needed to do was add a restart. That would have been perfect. But what they were trying to do at the time, these mega companies have great lobbyists. And you had companies back then like U.S. Express and Covenant and J.B. Hunt at the time, Swift for sure. They were trying to figure out how to make their trucks run 24 hours a day on 2 drivers. So they figured, you got 11 hours of driving, that's 22 hours. So between your pre-trips, your dropping and hooking, and all of that other stuff, that truck will never stop. You're basically going to have a driver running from basically 6 to 6, or 5 to 5, or whatever. And then they'll just, they just run as teams. And that was a really big push back in the early 2000s. There was a huge push for teams. So, and I've talked to enough of those drivers, even still. Good night. Some of these poor guys. I hope they get their experience and move on to better places. I'll tell you that. I was talking to a Covenant driver. He and the guy, they had both been in it about 3 months apiece. They were two students. They put two students together, and they were making like, what was it, like 36 cents a mile to the truck. It was ridiculous. I mean, the wages were criminal. So if they wanted to have a full check between the two of them, that truck had to run 6,000 miles a week. And so if you were by yourself, you got the full ride. If you weren't, it was like 36 or 38. I mean, it was in the mid 30s, but it was to the truck, so they had to split it. And, that right there, that mentality right there is an unintended consequence of deregulation. These mega companies popped up, and then the government stepped in because they're always here to help. And they started throwing money at these companies to train. So everybody became their own trainers, third-party training. And it just, there for a while, for about 5-6 years, it was just completely off the hook. US Express, I remember back in the 90s and early 2000s, they were the ones that really pioneered the auto shift. They were the ones that, they were Swift before Swift. They were the ones crashing every week. They were the ones piling up. They were the ones doing a lot of stupidity, because they realized that if they didn't have to teach their students how to shift gears, they could get them hauling freight faster. So they bought auto shifts. So that was their big thing. We got auto shifts. And then Warner came out with, we got this wonderful e-log. I knew several guys that used that early Warner e-log, and it was an absolute disaster. And from what they used to tell me, that Warner wanted to ditch it, but they had spent so much money trying to implement it that they couldn't afford to get rid of it. Like guys were telling me, if you parked your truck in the yard and it bounced from tower to tower, you'd have to sit there another 10 hours. It would show movement, and they wouldn't fix it. So you might be sitting there 20, 25 hours just because it showed movement. Or if a mechanic got in there and moved the truck, sorry, we're not fixing it. And, I used to think that was kind of flaky and all that, but I heard that same story from so many different people who didn't know each other that I was like, okay, maybe there's some validity to this one. And then old Mr. Hatfield went to work for them, my buddy Mike, and sadly he passed away about 1.5 years ago in actually a horrible accident down there outside of Elk City, Oklahoma. He was hauling water for a oil company and caught the road, flipped the truck, and landed on top of him. And it was a horrible wreck. That poor guy. It's I miss Mike. He was a pretty high-strung little dude. He looked like Rodney Carrington, and was just kind of fired up, but he was a good guy. He was one of the good ones. But he went to work for them, and he said it was just, he had something similar to that happen, and they just made him sit another 10 hours, and he just, after about 3 weeks of getting jerked around and not being told what to do and all, he just took the truck back and told him to stick it, and went back out to the oil field. It's one of those deals. But I'll tell you this, though, from paper to e-log, once you figure it out, once you got used to it, and once we kind of gave us a little bit of leeway and latitude with it, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. I do like being able to sleep at night, I'll tell you that. I don't like being hung out, but paper wasn't so bad as long as you lived in reality. But excuse me, there was too many guys that were just sitting there editing their logbooks for no real reason. I mean, seriously, for no real reason. They back it up every night. Why are you backing it up? You don't need to back it up. Just draw your line and go to bed. Nope, they'd back it up. And they just screw around with it and screw around with it and screw around with it. And truthfully, after a while, the companies have to be like, time out. You've got to pull yourself back. Because I know when I worked at Decker, the reason we went on E-log as fast as we did was because, it was dirty pool by the Iowa DOT. But they rolled in and did an audit. And when they were up to about $2 million worth of fines, they told the boss, the way the story goes, we'll cut the fine in half and defer it if you go full E-log within this year. And I'm not lying, he was full E-log within that year. So yeah, that's how they got a lot of guys. And then of course, when I came to work here, the E-log wasn't a law yet. It was still about a month away, and but I'd already been on E-log for a couple of years at that point, and I just let it go. But been thinking about getting into a lot of safety rules, regulations, and stuff like that. You read the rule book; it's interesting. Like the 2-hour exemption, ag exempt. What else? PC. Now, I'll tell you what, the PC is the one that's going to get us. There are too many people out there that want to take that away from us right now. And we need it. We truly need it. But we also need to stop abusing it, because there's just too many guys that are abusing it. And they haven't got caught yet. And some of them get caught, some of them don't. But when you go through and read the rule book, it's actually, of all the rules in the not really, of all the rules in the rule book, there's a lot of gray area built in, and the gray area is built in to allow the officer to write the ticket, but it's also built in to allow you to fight the ticket. It's more about the spirit of the rule. But when you get to those three things, it's cut and dry. It is. There's really no leeway on any of them. Ag exempt is one of those that you got to be very careful on. Running in your circles and stuff like that, because a lot of this stuff is up to the interpretation of the arresting officer. So you got to be careful about that. I do know that I've been really closely watching a lot of the emissions stuff. Despite what Facebook says, they haven't, a lot of the regulations have been rolled back, but the laws haven't changed. So we need to discuss the difference between regulations and laws. And the stuff that's been passed by the states, by the feds, all this, none of that stuff's been repealed yet. So, like I said, I'm not against deleting a truck. Just, you could still get in trouble for it, even though at the moment they're really not enforcing a lot of it. So just watch your P's and Q's, and don't roll smoke in California, because that's stupid. I used to run California all the time. Never had a lick of trouble there, because I obeyed the rules. I stayed where I was supposed to stay. I didn't make a spectacle of myself, and you know what? Never had a problem. Those cops are like any other cops. They don't want to screw with you. They have better things to do than sit there and screw with a guy who wants to be a jackass. And so, you know, like when I was talking to a friend of mine, he had a guy he knows just thought it'd be cute to hit his jakes going into a scale house there outside of Lamar, or is that one in Lyman? Lamar. Yeah. Hey, I was talking about you, Rob, referencing some of your videos. And so yeah, Rob Finch, he was the guy I was talking about. He just popped in. So yeah, he thought it would be cute to go hit his jakes, and he's got unmuffled jake brakes going into a scale in Colorado, and they wrote him all sorts of wonderful tickets. All sorts of wonderful tickets. They ended up, it was just awful. So yeah, if you're gonna be going into the scales, just turn your jakes off and creep in. Of course, not like that Canadian that I was behind today, who creeped into the scale from the interstate, 3.5 miles an hour all the way through it and all the way back out of it, and a 30-second scale trip took about 4 minutes. I could tell that he couldn't read English. He missed every sign. It was bad. He knew what green and red meant. So, and at least he could follow arrows. So I guess he had that going for him. So yeah, but aside from that, it's been I tell you what, I wish I could find these in the 16-ounce cans again. I do like this water. It's got me drinking more water, I'll tell you that. But yeah. Sorry, I saw something out the window. The problem I've had with a lot of Canadian truckers, especially a lot of the foreigners, they're being overrun by foreigners up there. Don't let anybody lie to you about that. They're just being absolutely overrun, and they're all buying trucks and coming down here. But the problem is that I'm seeing right now is they're not understanding the difference between metric and imperial, and so you'll be stuck behind one on a 2-lane, and if you look at your kilometer meter, he's running 60 kilometers an hour, which is about 42 here. And you're like, you need to use the other gauge. Yeah, my sister's in Calgary. That's where she lives. They moved back up there because my brother-in-law, he's works out in the oil fields. She likes it up there. One of these days I'll get a passport and go up there. But so what I'm finding is a lot of them, when they come down here, they don't make the conversion from, like I said, a metric to imperial, or English, or what do they call it? The English standard or whatever. I don't know. I forgot the name of it. I use it, and we're the only country that does use it anymore, and I still forgot the name of it. But that's all right. Most of the bolts in this truck are all metric. I learned the metric system from the DARE program. You Gen Xers will like that joke. Thank you, drug dealers. You taught me the metric system. I appreciate it. It's kind of funny when I go to there's a Middle East store I go to there in Wichita, where they have a lot of imported stuff in from Greece and Turkey and Lebanon and stuff like that, and it's all in the metric. So I actually have to use my knowledge of the metric system and to do my shopping now because, well, yeah. But the metric system's really easy to learn. It's just we tried to learn it and we tried to convert to it in the 70s and even in the 80s, and it just didn't stick. I don't know why. But I mean, it's tens, hundreds, thousands, and truthfully, it's not a bad thing to know. So what is a kilo? It's what, 1,000 grams or something like that. So you just, everything's tens, hundreds, thousands, and so yeah, it's so. I had my refrigerator die the other day. I sit there. You price one of these refrigerators out in the semi truck. I can buy one for my house cheaper than I can buy that thing for. These truck refrigerators are just prohibitively expensive, and I'm not going to go put one sitting on the floor over here or this or that. That thing can stay off. I went years without a fridge and basically lived off things like this. If you get to the Dollar Generals, man, there's 8 of these in here. $8, $1 a piece. These at like the Loves are like $3 a piece. So little beef and cheese, they take the edge off. So yeah, I bought 2 of them. Like I said, I save a lot of money doing it that way. Like the drinks I like to drink, I drink those Powerade Zeros, like these here, and I can get them at Walmart for, depending if they're on sale, for 80 cents a piece to $1 a piece, and at the truck stop they're $3.50 a piece. It's a clean rip. You get 2 for $4.50. I was like, I went to the dollar store and bought 5 for that. So yeah, it's one of the reasons I swing into Eastview, Tennessee. That Loves there on US 45. It backs up right to the Dollar General, so I just park my truck, run on over, do my shopping, and then grab my fuel and boogie on out. So yeah, if you had I'll tell you what, my last video that with the round trip, one of the things I didn't really talk about was why those landing legs were bent. When I picked that trailer up, it was about 5 in the morning. It was in a corner of the lot where it was all dirt and it was laid over like that, and the shag driver had dropped it basically in the mud, so it was at an angle like this. So I just backed under it, landing legs went up, did everything, and took off with it, ran over and got it washed, and just was too busy doing other stuff because, it was at an angle, so I didn't notice it was bent. And then when I went to go jack it down, I noticed it was like, oh, that was and this wasn't the company's fault, but we got screwed out of every bit of detention on that because they never gave us a pickup time. They never gave us an appointment time. And then when we got there, they marked us down as late. So I sat there for almost 8 hours for free. And I said, that's not happening again. That was about a $400 blunder that we didn't get paid for. So I'll have to work real hard to make sure that doesn't happen again. But that's the breaks. That's just some of the things you're just going to run into in this business, especially with these meat companies. When it comes to paying detention, a lot of these guys are shisty. And a lot of times when you are loaded late, the way it's written in the contracts is if it's an hour late out the door or it's 10 hours late, you've got to be 10 hours late to your delivery if you want to collect on that detention. But then they're going to mark you down as late. So I mean, it's a catch-22, because if you could still make it, you got to make it. They're not going to change the delivery time. And So they Triumph Food Seaborg's Farms was horrible about that. Remember the first load I ever hauled for them at Decker. This is back in 2008, and I was on paper then. I had a 379 then. So higher up, I go down there, and I've got to have this load from Guyman, Oklahoma to Salem, Ohio. And if you've ever been out to Carriage Hill Foods in Salem, it's a Fresh Mark now. It's over there by Canfield, just on the south side of Youngstown. Basically, it's on the Pennsylvania border. And they said, you got 3 days to do it. It's got to be there at 8 a.m. Thursday morning. They loaded me at 9 p.m. Tuesday night and wouldn't change the appointment. So I fired it up, drove to Meade, Kansas, stopped at that little truck stop there in Meade, took about a 4-hour nap, woke up at about 2:33 in the morning, and left there and drove all the way to London, Ohio that day. That was 1,056, I think. Got about 4 hours worth of sleep there, and then got up really early and drove into Salem, Ohio. I made it with right about 30 minutes to spare before my appointment time. And I called up dispatch and said, I'm going to wash the trailer out and I'm going to bed because I got to let my book catch up with me. So I had to sit there the rest of the day basically to let my book catch up. Because the bills are time stamped. Good times. So yeah. And a lot of these bills are still time stamped. So like on some of these Tyson bills here, you look at that. Right there in the corner, they're time stamped. So you got to be careful with what you're doing. And time stamping is one of those things that will get you in a lot of trouble. At least E-Log is kind of taking a little bit of that sting out of it. But I'll tell you right now, I've talked about this before, but if you can, sometimes if you know how to run a split, it'll really save you in the long run. So it's just a little food for thought. I've done videos on splits. Sometimes, like if you're going to be on the south side of Kansas City and you can't make it all the way through, or it's rush hour, excuse me, if you take an 8-hour break, say like you shut down at 6 at night or 8 at night, and you can leave at 6 in the morning, but by 7 o'clock it's going to be packed up. But you've got a couple of extra hour and a half or so on your book. Do an 8-hour split. Get up at 4 o'clock. Drive through Kansas City. Go find yourself a place to park because the truck stops are emptying out by then. Take a 2-hour break. Hell, go to St. Joe. They got a Waffle House there. But I've done that before, just to beat traffic. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's not. It just all depends on what you want. But I remember one summer, it seemed like I spent the whole time on third shift, and I didn't have to deal with any traffic. I didn't deal with traffic in Atlanta or Chattanooga or Nashville. It was just all night. I'd start about 10, 11 o'clock at night and drive all night and listen to a lot of old country music and George Norrie, Coast to Coast. I can't listen to rock music that early in the morning. I just find it irritating. Unless, of course, it's something like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Screw Neil Young. Anyhow. But yeah, it's just figuring out how to do it. So yeah, they went, those meat yards used to, they get a little temperamental about it, and yeah, I got just screwed clean out of my my detention. Saw me, but it wasn't my company's fault, and it wasn't my fault. They just never set the appointment, and that was a. Well, I'll tell you what was wrong with my truck a couple of weeks ago. Well, it threw a D-rate code right before Christmas on the 22nd, and I was on my way to Moore, Oklahoma. I was going to work the holidays, and I'll tell you what, I wasn't having a good week anyways, and just it's the holidays, man. I just don't like them, but it threw a D-rate code like 2 exits from Kenworth and Wichita, and I just viewed this as a sign. I just threw my hands up and said I'm done. Turns out it was a turbo speed sensor went out. So I knew my mileage had been off, and I thought it might have been winter diesel, but it wasn't off that bad. And sure enough, it was turbo speed sensor. They replaced it. My mileage is back up to 7.5, 8 now, if I drive sanely. Yeah, if I keep it 65, 70 miles an hour, we still do pretty good. So yeah, so I had him do that, and I had him fix a couple of other little things while it was in there. I mean, they found an exhaust leak by the pressure sensor, which was what's throwing the check engine light. It's back. It missed me. We have a relationship now, apparently, me and the check engine light. So that's back on, but it's just a pressure code. It'll clear itself. It'll clear itself here shortly. Usually, if I want to clear it in a hurry, I actually just fill up with. If I go down south, I'll fill up with Southern Fuel and dump a bottle of Power Service in it, the silver bottle, and it'll just burn it out like the next day the check engine light goes out. So, and that's one of those things here is probably in the next year, if I keep the truck this long, the DOC is probably going to need to be replaced. We've already replaced the filter. When the turbo went out, or the turbo actuator went out, it allowed too much pressure to build up and actually knocked the filter loose inside the housing. So instead of it going through the honeycomb, it was actually going around it, and it threw some pretty gnarly D-rate codes and all that. It D-rate, it would clear. It D-rate, it would clear, and figured out that's what happened. The element was actually loose inside there, so we had to put a whole new filter in. That was pricey. The DOC, though, is going to be really expensive. So, actually talking about, like I said, I'm actually looking at buying a new truck here soon, just because it's time. I'd like to go back to something I'm a little more comfortable in. Truthfully, I'd love to go back to a hood, but a 579 is probably where I'm going. Those 567s are actually starting to grow on me, them little anteater looking things, but don't know about them yet. But they're actually starting to grow on me a little bit. I've seen some that have been set up that are actually pretty good looking. But basically, they're just a 579 with a hood, you know, and with a slope hood. And those new hoods that Peterbilt come out with, those are basically 579s with a hood. Yeah, we talked about that. I saw one really nice the other day that was two-tone painted up, had chrome stacks up the side. It was pretty slick, mid-roof, the whole ordeal. My next truck will definitely be a mid-roof. I've kind of got it narrowed down to where I want to find basically well, while I was home, I found they had these two, it's probably going to be used. I would love to buy a brand new one, but I just really don't want the payments, honestly. I was looking at they had 5 trucks there at the Pete dealer in Wichita, and when I tell you I was over this truck the last week, that's not even a joke. I was over it, and it was in the shop, and as far as I was concerned, it could stay there a while. So they had 389s there, and they had 2 579s, and the 579s were black cherry, beautiful color, but they were 450 horse, 13 speed, and Cummins with a 336, which is identical to what I have in here. The hoods were 565s, 18 speeds, and 341s, and if I could get that 565 combination in a 579, that's actually what I want. My pink truck I had it was such a great combination that, and when I'm down in the Ozarks and all that, trying to go up and down the hills, that 18 speed, especially, there's like when you get them out of West Plains down into Hardy, and you're pulling ice cream out of Thayer, Mammoth Springs off US 63. They got a stoplight at the bottom of the hill, and I'm not gonna lie, that 18 speed makes it really nice. You can really just get it going, and it's effortless up those hills, and I really miss that. So when they bought that truck, that was the company that bought it. That was a West Coast truck. They did it to run out to Seattle or out to LA or out to all those places in that truck. And I used to really like going out there. Well, hello there in the UK. I've never got he asked if it's a 565 computer program or does it need more. I've never got a clear answer on that, and I'm wanting to say it's I think it's the same basic platform, but I think some of the things are a little beefier. I know the clutches are a little different, so I'll have to ask. I'm very leery about computer programs, especially on a 450 horse truck. When you start getting into these into the computers, I know back in the day you could flip a switch. I mean, the mechanic could do it. You go to 450 to 485, and as a 35 more horse, it did make a difference. But anything over that ended up being just an absolute. It was a lot of work, and then once you start upping the horsepower and upping the torque and upping all that, then you've got to start worrying about driveline components and things of that nature. Of course, I tell all these guys that have all these high horsepower trucks and all these tunes and stuff, and your horsepower doesn't matter if you can't get it to the ground. If you can't get it, if you got a 1,000 horsepower truck and you can't get but 300 horses to the ground, you're just burning your truck up. That happens. If you're going to have your truck tuned, be very careful about who you have tune it. You get what you pay for. I know there's a tuning company out of Canada that I know a lot of the guys out in western Kansas were using. They had a lot of guys get their trucks blown up. You need a company like Pittsburgh Power to where you can actually take the truck in and they can put it on a dyno and they can tune it there. And just flashing a tune onto a truck, I haven't seen a lot of real positive things happen about that. I mean, the guy who's loading it up in the truck, he needs to know what he's doing. And make sure that he can actually get in the computer, make sure the mapping is correct and all that. And I mean, there's an art to it. There's an art to tuning. I do not possess that art. My idea of tuning is hitting it with a hammer until it does what I want. I've got an 88 GMC at the house that's about to learn that lesson. I'll tell you what, I did those videos on that old pickup truck I bought. I got it running, I got it driving, and then something went haywire somewhere. I have never had a vehicle kick my butt like that vehicle kicked my butt. I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it and worked on it, and it's bound and determined to defy me. So I'm I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it. But me and that truck, we're fighting. What do you think about the bigger stockage is set up right to get better fuel mileage? The one thing I learned with Caterpillars, I drove Cats for years. I drove Detroits. I've driven Cummings. If you let the truck do what it's supposed to do, and you can have enough horsepower and torque to make it effortless, it'll do everything you want it to do, and it will get good mileage. I had a 96 Pete with a Detroit 60 in it and a Super 10. If you've never driven a Super 10 through Chicago, do it at Cicero at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a good time. But, wait, that was a 9-speed. The Super 10 was the Freightliner. I had an FLD too, a 94. But yeah, that Pete, even hauling, they had it cut back, but even at 430 horsepower, if I drove it right, I was getting 7 hauling 85.5, with it. It was the fuel mileage was shocking for that truck. On my Caterpillars, if I drove them normal, oh yeah. Let's see. Try to get back to see all messages. Let's see. What did he write? Rob wrote, he said, Trucking Resources. I put 600 to the ground on Pittsburgh Power's dyno with one of their tunes. It's great, but you have to be a driver, especially in the summer. You can't drive like a stock program. When I bought my 386, that truck had been governed its whole life. And it was broke in at 65 miles an hour. And one of the things I discovered was when we uncapped it, I had to be very careful for a while because I'd hit 66, 67 miles an hour. That thing would just start shaking like that. It would literally just start shaking. You could just feel it fighting. But you got to 67, 68, 69 miles an hour, giggity. It smoothed out, but it's like it had a ridge to where that's just where it was used to running, and it did not enjoy going beyond those parameters because that's where it was broke in at. And when we were selling all the hoods, when Decker was selling all the hoods, these guys would buy these fancy hoods. Like we had this beautiful 379X, and these guys were uncapping them and opening them wide up and then blowing them up within a month, 2 months. They were just blowing them up. Now my last company truck, and I wish I would have had the money to buy this, it was also a 386. It was a 16, and we had I had a fault with there was something wrong with the governor. I could jump the governor and make that thing run. So I ran that thing up and down through all the ranges and all that. And I'll tell you what, that truck got 8 miles a gallon. It was just a great truck. Because what I discovered was when they're capping him at 65, when you're doing 450, a 13 speed and 336s, when you get to 65 miles an hour, you're just entering your power band and it just shuts off. And so when I would get that thing over 67, 68 miles an hour, it would just really start pulling. I mean, it would just, It would just go. This truck does the same thing. It really doesn't really start digging deep until you get to, like I said, 67, 68 miles an hour. And I'm not going to lie, anything over about 72, 73, I'm just blowing raw fuel out the exhaust. But I buy the fuel and it's mine to waste. That's always been my contention. If I want to waste my own fuel, I will. I get a good discount. But, that was, what was crazy about these 65 mile an hour trucks was you could really feel it just starting to dig, and then the governor would kick. But the last truck I had didn't do that, and boy, I could make that thing move. But I had to be very careful about who I did it around because, well, just like my video, rats are everywhere. And some guy, I eventually put 100,000 miles on it, and I got caught, and they cut it back, and which was disappointing. But shortly thereafter, I bought my truck and opened it up. It was a good truck. My first red 386. Oh yeah, me too. I take my Crown Vic out while I was home. I put E85 in it, and we got E85 in town. And I'll tell you what, I only get about 11, 12 miles a gallon with it. But boy, I tell you what, my car comes alive on that stuff. I get up to about 110, 112, somewhere in there, and I got to be careful though. Eventually, I'm going to get caught, and I don't need to be doing that. That's one heck of a ticket, doing 112 and a 55. Yeah, that's a heck of a ticket. And with the CDL, I don't need to be getting in that kind of trouble. But the mileage is out there. I know I had one student, he quit, and he ended up going to Wilson or Jim Palmer after they were bought by Wilson Logistics. And he said there were guys there that were getting 9.1, 9.2, but they were the guys that were running 62 miles an hour and doing it all real slow and just kind of moseying everywhere. And he said, but they were bumping into the low 9s, so it can be done. I could be into the high 8s if I'd actually slow down. Oh yeah, I've heard. I remember VinWiki did a story about why there's no Canadian cannonball record, because they have up to 7 years, and if they find out that you did that, they can write you a ticket and suspend your stuff just years after the fact. And I guess it's just not even worth it up there. I think the record right now for the 2904 is 25:39, I think, from the Red Ball to the Red Ball Garage in Manhattan to the Portofino in LA. They ended up doing it, having a rolling average of something like 104 miles an hour, just absolutely insane. Volvo is an interesting truck. The guy, Rob, just posted he's got a friend with a Volvo who's getting 10s. I believe it. I've driven Volvos with Cummins, and I've driven Volvos with the full Volvo units, Volvo engines and transmissions. And I'll tell you right now, the Volvo engine and transmission, when you got a full Volvo unit, especially the automatics, I drove one of their automatics. They are just like, they're incredible trucks. Unfortunately, Volvo's service plan sucks. That's one of the reasons I've driven enough Volvos. No, I'm not comfortable in one sitting in it. You're sitting like this in a fishbowl. They turn on a dime. They do everything you want to do. They're smooth trucks. They get great mileage. They just sucks to sit in it. And I know the 880s are the condos. They're really heavy. They're like W9 heavy. But I drove one that had that Volvo automatic, and I was really impressed. We were hauling. We had 4-axle trucks and 3-axle trailers. We were hauling all that ethanol grain there at Decker, and I did that one weekend to fill in to make some extra money because I had nothing better to do. And so I was driving the day cab between Fort Dodge and Blair, Nebraska. And I'm going to tell you what, that at 90,000 pounds with all the wheels on the ground, that thing was just smooth as glass. I was actually really impressed with the Volvo. Like I said, the only thing I don't like is just the way you sit in it. You think being as short-legged as I am, it would be easier, but if I can't stretch my feet all the way out, I'm just not interested. And I can't really stretch my legs out in this truck at all. And with this cabinet here, I can't put the seat any further back either, which sucks. So yeah, but they're coming out with some neat new stuff. And the interesting thing about all these emission systems that are coming out now is they're getting better, and they're getting way better than they used to be. Part of why they came out, I don't know if you're going to blame this on Bush or Obama or on both of them, but they did that clean air mandate and forced, actually that would be Bush. They forced these companies to put out all this emissions requirements before they were ready. That's why, that's why we didn't get DEF for 4 years. I had a pre-production truck, a 2006, that had a burner on it, and that was a screwy thing. And then, so then when they were mainstream in 07, 8, and 9, I had the 9, and it didn't have DEF on it. They didn't have DEF till 10. But what I found out about the 7s, 8s, and 9s was they had the emissions on it, but everybody, especially out west, they wanted those trucks because they fit. There was this gray area for those 3 years, and they fit this loophole, and no DEF. And when they went to that DEF, that's when we really started having problems, because we weren't ready for it. The Cummins wasn't ready for it. Nobody was ready for it. In fact, PACCAR, part of the problems they had there for years was they tried to, and Mack did this. Well, no, we'll talk about Mack in a minute. But PACCAR decided that they were going to use a Cummins emission system on a PACCAR engine, and it didn't work. Mack decided that they were just going to build their whole brand new system, and we all know what happened there. Caterpillar was like, screw it, we're out. And they were. And then Detroit, they did whatever Detroit does. And they haven't really stayed up with Detroit. But the guys who have them like them. I'm not opposed to owning a Detroit, but the only reason I stick with the Cummins is because they're like the LS of the semi-truck world. You can get it fixed anywhere. It doesn't matter where you go. Somebody's going to have a part for one. So that's kind of why I stick with the Cummins. It's just, like I said, they're the LS of the truck world. People starting to pack in here all of a sudden. So we've been at this about an hour now. I suppose start taking some final questions here. Going to be working on a couple of videos here soon. Like I told you, that deregulation video, I don't even know how to do it. I've got some ideas, but no matter how I do it, nobody's going to be happy. Did that dude just hit that dude? Oh, no. nobody hit nothing. I heard something and something shook, and we got another company truck next to me. So I was like, well, if he hit it, I'll have to get out there with my collapsible baton and whoop somebody. I talk a lot of crap. But that being said, I don't even know how to approach that video. I'm working on it. I'm hoping to have some really good facts and be really objective. I don't have a load right now. I delivered about 40 miles north of here. I had to come back to the shop. Well, I'm glad they figured it out. I'm glad they figured something out. I had to come back to the shop. I had an airline that was just really leaking bad, and it was starting to be audible, especially the colder it got. And I was losing air. I was losing all of my air within an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'd be asleep about midnight, and yeah, well, let's talk. I'll tell you what my thoughts on that were. It'd be about midnight, and all of a sudden, all the trailer lever will pop because all the air's out, and that trailer just drops because it dumps. It's got an automatic dump, and it'll shake you out of bed at 2 in the morning if you're not ready for it. So what I was having us do is just pull the trailer, let it drop, and then let the cap settle, and then pull that, and that way it doesn't wake me up at 2 in the morning. But the last time it drained out, it was an hour and a half, and it was empty. So I was like, yeah, we probably ought to get this fixed. Turns out it was just one of those braided lines that runs along the driver's side frame rail. And with a quick disconnect, bushing inside had deteriorated, and it was a pretty hard line too. The mechanic took it and he went like that with it, and you could just hear it go crunch, 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 crunch. And I was like, yeah, it's probably time. So, but when they stopped using brass fittings and started putting quick disconnects on everything, it just, the air leaks are just out of this world, especially the colder it gets. So thankfully I haven't had any antifreeze cold water leaks, but I think hopefully we got them all straightened up. It'll take you a season to get them done, but I ended up I had a power steering leak. I went and Kenworth was like, you want us to fix that? I said, you know what? Yeah, go ahead and fix that. It's leaking. It's probably ought to get fixed. So they put a new clamp on it and charged me like $235 to do that. And I was like, you know what? I could have done that, and it still leaked. So yeah, I think we'll have to watch that a little closer next time. But overall, the bill at Peterbilt wasn't too bad. When all was said and done, I had that fixed. I had the exhaust fixed because I had a leak in it, which was what was popping my check engine light, and I had the D-rate. And all in all, once we got everything done, labor, parts, everything, it was $1,945. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. I'm just glad the turbo wasn't leaking, because it would have been a $6,000-$8,000 bill at that point. Yeah. Nobody rebuilds turbos anymore. They just want to slam a new one on. It's one of the things I miss. You used to be able to buy the parts. You could actually pull the thing off in a parking lot, slam a rebuild kit into it, put it back on, and then go get cleaned up, have dinner, go to bed, and take off the next morning. It was used to watch guys in the parking lot pull heads off their trucks just to replace a head gasket, especially those caterpillars, when you have the 3 separate heads. I remember if you get one that starts blowing and you just replace the gasket on it, it's going to blow again, and then it's going to start blowing more and more regularly, and eventually you're probably going to have to get the head planed or the block planed or have some real machine work done with it. Put a new head on it. You never know. But that was back in the old 3406 days and stuff like that. So, ran into an old guy down south. He had an old A model cat in a cab over, and he was talking about how they rebuilt the engine on it, and he said they couldn't find a camshaft. They're unmade. Well, he says, so we found one. I said, where'd you find one? He said, a guy was using it as a doorstop. The guy had been using it as a doorstop in his shop for like 25 years. It worked. So that's how I got the crank for my Torino. We needed a new crank, couldn't find one. Guy had one sitting in his shop. Guy ordered like 5-6 years ago and never picked up. Should you go back OTR? I don't know your situation. For what I'm doing right now, I like it. If I could make this kind of money at home, I would be at home. But you're just, this guy says, should I go back OTR? I've been wrestling with the idea. You're just going to have to sit down and figure it out what you need to do. I mean, if this is what you need to do to get caught up, or this is what you need to do to get something right, or get some cash in the bank, or go ahead. I mean, if you're doing all right at home and everything's working, there's a lot to be said for that too. There's some real, I could get some decent jobs at home. What is that? No, never mind. I could get some pretty decent jobs at home, but I wouldn't have the time off or the freedom that I have doing this. But I didn't get that overnight either. It was, what have I been an owner operator? What? 3, 6, 8 years, 8, 9 years now. And, yeah, and I really like it. It's one of those things, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And but it's also come at quite a cost. It's come at quite a cost. So that's one of those things, if you're willing to pay the cost, there's a price to everything in this world. Don't let nobody tell you that there isn't, because if they tell you there's not, they're selling you something. I get some really good home time, but I've had to pay my dues. I mean, the last, the last 2 years I worked at my last company as an owner operator, it was 100% forced dispatch, which was illegal. And if I bucked them, they sat me, they starved me. And I was getting 2, maybe 3 days off a month if I was lucky. I took vacation one time, and they called me on my vacation wanting to know when I was going to come back to work. And that right there was pretty much the end of it. I actually told them, I said, dude, I'll go out in the middle of the street to tell you I ain't home. Don't ever call me on vacation again. And that right there was when I decided it was time to make my move and start looking. And I found this place, and these guys have been good. They've been good to me. Is this my forever home? I don't know. Probably not. But For the time being now, yeah, I mean, I don't have any complaints. But, well, I say I don't have any complaints, but the things I'd complain about are the same things that go wrong at every company. Like I said, what you hated about your last company, you'll hate at your next company. And I'm smart enough to know that there's no perfect job. And there's just some weird things that are just universal with this business. With this dealing with dispatch, with just you're dealing with personalities, and that's the hardest thing to get across people. A lot of these truck drivers are truck drivers because they're just so socially awkward that they're not people persons at all. A lot of them are rude, they're nasty, they're crass, they don't have a lot of human interaction. So I mean, it's kind of a give and take, but then you're dealing with personalities with dispatch too, and what you hated about your last dispatch, you'll hate about your next dispatch. They all play the same games. They all have the same lines. They all will tell you things like, "Oh, the load canceled." It didn't. You watched them load it. I've had them tell me the load canceled, and I was already hooked to it. Home for a year. I got off the road briefly and built airplanes for Cessna. Went back to doing that, and that drove me nuts. I had this great union job that, for some reason, this great union job only paid $24,900 a year. Yeah, you're dealing with personalities with dispatch, and you can't take it personally, and too many of these guys take it personally. So you just have to be willing to put up with a lot of crap, because you start realizing that it's just part of the industry. There's a lot of crap in the industry. There's a lot of screwy people in the industry, and what makes me laugh, it doesn't make me mad anymore. That's the weirdest thing about getting older, is I don't get mad anymore about a whole lot of anything, really. Is that these young kids in dispatch, when you're dealing with these 20-somethings, they think they invented the game. And they're telling you something on the phone, and you're like, just looking at the phone like, did you just say that? And truthfully, when they lie to you, you catch them in a lie, and you're going to catch them in lies. You're going to catch them in all sorts of lies. But here's the thing: to them, these lies ain't nothing big. To us, they're big. To them, they're not. It's just part of doing business. To them, and they don't understand the contrast. But at the same time, sometimes it's better just to keep the peace and just let things happen. Because I'll tell you right now, the world takes its own trash out, and they end up screwing around, and basically they end up crossing people they shouldn't have crossed. And that's bugging me. They end up crossing people they shouldn't have crossed, and they get slapped. They get slapped down, or they quit. I can't tell you how many dispatchers I've outlasted. I've outlived a ton of them. This job has been different. They still play a few of those games here and there. Basically, one or two guys. But this is a place where a lot of people go to stay. And so I like that. I like that a lot. I've been here. I didn't realize I'd been here about 8 years now. 9 years now. I've been here a long time. So, 2017. No, wait. Was it? Yeah. 2017 is when I come over here. So, anyhow, well, it's been about an hour and 20 minutes. If anybody's got any more questions, we'll wrap it up before I I shut her down for the night. Like I said, we got working on some videos, and sometimes the ideas don't come nearly as fast as I would like, but it is what it is. So anyhow, well, I think I'm gonna let you go. I probably ought to give Red a call and let her know I haven't forgotten about her yet. Probably. Yeah, I probably should do that. Yeah, I probably should do that. I found her a copy of her favorite movie the other day while I was home, so she's happy. The Big Easy. She loves that movie for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe she's got a secret crush on Dennis Quaid. Whatever. I'm not there to make fun of it. Instead, I can make fun of it on the whole internet. Unless she's watching, and then I'm gonna get an earful here in about 5 minutes. Yeah. So, well, guys, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for hanging out. I always enjoy doing these, and this one went along pretty good. Seemed like it flowed, and I really enjoyed it. So, thanks for hanging out, and you guys stay safe out there, and we'll see y'all later.